Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's great for me to once again rise and have the opportunity to have a debate with my honourable colleague from St. Boniface on this subject. I just want to pass along all of my thoughts and prayers with relation to what happened yesterday in St. Boniface with that large fire, and let's hope that everyone that was involved is okay. Now to the subject matter that we were talking about, this evening, Mr. Speaker. Far too many small businesses in Canada are struggling due to the burden of credit card fees. And with all the financial uncertainty that small businesses face in the current economic climate, the extra burden of some of the highest merchant fees in the world is an unwanted and an unneeded encumbrance. It's estimated that Canadian businesses pay $5 billion a year to process credit card payments. And these costs, in turn, are pushed on to the consumer, Mr. Speaker, as all prices are hiked to cover the cost of processing credit cards, regardless of the type of payment a consumer uses. Credit card users get some of these costs offset by rewards like air miles or cash back, but cash and debit users are the ones footing the bill for these perks. Essentially, Mr. Speaker, everyone pays for Canada's artificially inflated credit card merchant fees. Now, the NDP, we have raised this issue time and time again, but the government's response has been slow and short-sighted. The government introduced a voluntary code of conduct, which they claimed would protect merchants. But the code is riddled with holes, Mr. Speaker. For example, the code states that merchants must have a 30-day grace period to cancel agreements when rates rise. However, Mr. Speaker, some payment processing companies are now forcing merchants to sign lease agreements for credit card terminals which do not have this grace period and which have sky-high cancellation costs, effectively forcing merchants to stick with a processor even when the rates jump. But the biggest concern I have heard about the Code of Conduct is its voluntary nature, Mr. Speaker. Although the minister likes to argue that the code is only voluntary until it's broken, this makes little to no sense. If the minister believes the code is mandatory, then it should be enshrined in legislation. That way, everyone knows exactly where they stand, Mr. Speaker. That would remove the risk that further down the road, the government would simply disregard the code without parliamentary approval. We have seen this with the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investment, that it's far too easy for a voluntary agreement, especially with the industry and the government, to be tossed aside. Mr. Speaker, the government had the perfect opportunity to fix this system with the publication of the final report of the Payments Task Force earlier this year. The report painted a dark picture of the state of the payment system in Canada with a number of useful suggestions for moving forward. However, the Conservatives have still refused to act on these recommendations. A bill to rectify these problems would provide the perfect opportunity to codify rules to protect merchants from high payment processing and the costs and kickstart the economy. I know my time is wrapping up, Mr. Speaker. I'd love to talk a lot more on this subject. I'm sure we'll be back again another day real soon. But on that, if we don't act soon, Mr. Speaker, merchants and consumers will risk being left behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Parliament.